to the Morpeth Local Area Council and the planning part of the meeting. That's to councillors, we have some public speakers, and to all of those who are watching this at home on live stream through YouTube, Northumberland TV. We are holding this meeting in a COVID safe environment, so we have got plenty of spacing between councillors and face masks to be worn when moving around, please. So if you do need to pop to toilet or you're leaving the meeting for any reason, please do put your face masks back on. With that, we'll move on to the procedure at planning meetings. What will happen is each application, I will first introduce it and then hand you over to the planning officer, who will go through a presentation. Once that presentation has been finished, we will also hear updates and then move to the public speaking part of the meeting. Once public speaking is over, we will then go to questions from members to the planning officers. And then we will look to have a motion recommendation with regards to the application. We will then debate the motion, debate the application, at which point, once that's complete, we will go to the vote. So without further ado, can I ask for any apologies for absence, please?
I've received apologies from Councillor Dickinson and from Mark Stoneman, who is the Project Manager of National Highways.
Thank you. Do we have any from the floor? Nope. Thank you. And if I can bring your attention to the minutes of our meeting held on Monday, the 13th of September. Do we accept that these are a true record of that meeting, please? Agreed. Thank you. And do we have any disclosure of members' interests, please? I will take that as we have none and move on. And we then move to the determination of the planning applications. Can I just ask members, has everyone received and had time to view the site visit videos that were circulated previously? Yep, great, thank you. So we move on to the first, which is on page 19, which is application number 20/03851/COU. And this is the change of use from field to construct a riding arena 22 metres by 40 metres for private use. And on that, I will hand you over to Will for the presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. As said, this is a change of use to construct a riding arena, 22 metres by 40 metres. It's enclosed by a timber 1.3 metre post and rail fence with a artificial chopped rubber surface. Here on the screen you'll see the location plans. On the stage right there we'll see the OS plan. We can see the cottage thatched area, which is the site of the riding arena. The blue line is the public right-of-way, and to this southeast there is the beginning of Upham village itself. For a bit more clarity, there's a photo overlay on the right there. The proposed arena is for private use. The applicant and owner has a stable block to approximately 90 metres to the northeast of the site. It is currently private. It is proposed for private use only. There's no lighting or any further development such as buildings associated with the site. The existing access, as you can see, is to the southeast corner there, and there's an existing hard standing on site. From the plan here, this is the 3D view of the enclosure and a cross-section of the post and rail timber fence, as said. The application site is sited outside of the Upham settlement boundary, and as such it is in the open countryside and in greenbelt land, as under policy S5 of the joint plan. Site photographs for a bit of context. We have some site photographs from the front, looking over the hard standing towards the field. Then from the entrance on top right to the northwest, that trail to the right leads up to the stable block. This bottom left photo is the site looking out onto the public highway, and the bottom right is the photograph showing up the public path as you see to a copse of woods to the north there. So officers do consider it to be in accordance with the local plan. The small-scale nature and low-land development and the recreational use suitable for open countryside, and as such would not affect the openness of the green belt or the open countryside. However, we are minded to impose several conditions up and above the standard conditions. These include private use only for the horses owned by the applicant. So no commercial use, no visitors bringing in their own horses. No lighting to be provided, that's either temporary or permanent. Just a condition, completely omitting that. And for the construction of the arena, we'd also propose a condition to ensure that the public highway and the public right-of-way are kept free of materials and any workings, make sure there's safe public access at all times.
Thank you very much. We now move on to the public speaking part of the meeting, where public speaker will have 5 minutes to talk, and at the end of that 5 minutes, that time is up and they can't talk any further. We only have one public speaker for this application, objector Dorothy Moore. Okay, so as soon as you start speaking, your 5 minutes will start. Thank you.
There are still inaccuracies in the report. For example, the stables are located to the east of the site, not the north, and no bridle way exists. Looking at the map in your papers, from the north end of the forest access track, walking south on the public footpath, you can look down at the valley from your elevated position, observing an undulating landscape with the forested River Lynn at the bottom. The relatively unobtrusive stable block's green roof is tucked away to the southeast. If you look southwest, the topography with its ridge and furrows will be broken by 880 square metres of black rubber clearly on view and to the west of the public footpath, which finishes next to the ford. Recent approved arena applications all appear within the curtilage of associated steadings, contrary to this one. Policy C1 states that development in the open countryside beyond settlement boundaries will not be permitted unless essential to the needs of agriculture or forestry, or are permitted by alternative policies. The alternative policies quoted in C1 are no relevance to this site. C1's associated inset map number 31 shows the field in question forms part of a wildlife corridor, which continues east of the Meadows Nature Reserve. Environmental 2.3a says permission will be refused unless it can be demonstrated that the benefits of the development clearly outweigh the harm to the nature conservation value of the site. 2 metres excavation for drainage with rubber surface contravenes this. The field is less than 2 acres, and yet the arena will take up 12% of it. This is not an example of sustainable development, as it does not contribute anything positive to the surrounding environment. Rubber takes more than 50 years to break down, contains pollutants which leach into the soil, and is toxic to fauna and flora, and inevitably will be dragged into the surrounding wildlife environment. ENV 31E states, the contribution of the landscape to Northumberland's environment will be recognised. And point 3 says, ensuring that new development on the edge of settlement does not harm the landscape character of the settlement edge, and where possible it has a net positive impact. Point 5 says the potential impact that small-scale development can have on the landscape in sensitive rural areas will be assessed. This arena does not sit well in the surrounding topography and does not add anything to it, or the community who use the footpath. As in point 6, instead it will have a net negative cumulative impact on the landscape character. STP 7B safeguards the countryside from encroachment, but this application creates piecemeal development by its situation over 100 metres from the existing stables. This could also be later infilled by other development which is directly against SP 4.7, and if allowed could set a precedent for other applications. Policy STP 1A says that development that is inappropriate in the green belt will not be supported unless very special circumstances outweigh the potential harm to the green belt and any other harm resulting from the proposal. What are the very special circumstances? Considering policy QOP1, does this application make a positive contribution to the local character, including landform and topography? Does it integrate the build form of the development with the site overall? No, because physically it alters it and is unrelated to the existing buildings, as you would have to pass through 3 gates, travel north up the public footpath, through another gate and turn west before even entering the arena. Policy QOP 2.2 states that development which would result in unacceptable adverse impacts on the amenity of neighbouring users in terms of both individual and cumulative impacts will not be supported. The application is visibly obtrusive from surrounding woodland, forestry track, adjacent road and especially the public footpath. Forestry is a dangerous occupation, so we need to have easy emergency access out of the site unhindered by any parking next to the arena. In conclusion, this application creates standalone development within Green Belt and Wildlife Corridor. It alters the topography of the existing landscape. It introduces rubber into the rural environment. It would be a dominating structure viewed from the public footpath. It proliferates urban sprawl. It provides no improvement as required in the local plan to conserve and enhance the environment. This could be mitigated by having an arena within the curtilage of the stables.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's the public speaking over, so we now move to members' questions to planning officers. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask? Councillor Dodd.
Yes. Structures are structures. This is changing of land, presumably. It's not, apart from a fence, nothing's being, there's no shed going here, is there? And just my question is about the, does this change the use of the land in any way, shape or form, as in green field or green belt even, to brownfield, or is that, can someone tell us?
Will, if you'd like to take that one, please.
Certainly. Yes, Councillor. Change to a horse riding arena is a recreational use, so that would be triggers the material change of use in the land in comparison to, say, using the field for grazing for cattle. So that's what's triggered the need for the planning permission. With regard to greenbelt and brownfield land, I don't believe we would consider this a brownfield site with this arena in place. It's still, it hasn't introduced any structures, so it would still remain a greenfield site. It wouldn't then become brownfield under the MPPF to build, say, reutilises housing, etc.
Any other questions? Councillor Murphy.
Hi, thanks. I'm interested in what the speaker said about the toxicity of the surface that will be used and also the visual impact of it being rubber, and obviously that does look quite harsh. And is there any reason why it has to be a rubber surface? Why can't it just be a field?
Thank you.
With regards to the specific material, this is what was proposed by the applicant. I believe the horse riding arena needs some form of surface. I'm aware that there have been different surfaces, different arenas, and maybe members may wish to condition the materials, to change the materials. That would be an option. Then if the applicant wished, they could also appeal that condition. But yeah, as far as I'm aware, the horse riding arena still need a surface rather than just grass, but we could control that if needs be.
Thank you. Councillor Bainan and then Councillor Darwin.
Yes, thanks, Chair.
Can you use the speaker, please?
Sorry. Shouldn't I? Councillor Murphy's really asked my question, and my concern is similar with the toxic material that could be being used. Is there not another material that we could be substituted for?
Yes, Councillor, as well as I think we can control it by means of a condition, if we're so minded. If we say happy with the principle of development and don't want to control by means of condition, we can certainly amend the report to that.
Councillor Darwin.
Thank you. For risk of repeating the question for the third time, I did have that same question wrote down, but Councillor Dawes' a question that this won't be changed from Greenbelt to Brownfield site and therefore won't be developed on later. It is still retained as Greenbelt, and I would like to see a condition, if we were to mind it, imposed to not use the rubber material, try and change to an alternative material. What that might be, I don't know, so I'd look for some guidance on that as well. Something more in keeping, I think, with the land. But it's a similar question to what has been asked before. Thank you.
Yeah, we could phrase the condition as the full details of the materials to be submitted prior to development. And then they'd have to come back with those details and go through the discharge conditions process. And we could consult on those materials.
Yeah, and just in relation, Councillor Darwin, to the Greenbelt point, the land will always be in the Greenbelt, so any future application that comes forward, we would always consider it against Greenbelt policy. And members, I know that you are concerned about the toxicity element of the proposed rubber layer that's going to be installed, and as well as explained, a condition could be appropriate here. It's maybe what the alternatives are. I think there's two aspects to this. One is for you, the visual aspect of it, with it being the black rubber, but the second is the toxicity element. This is, you know, it's very topical for us now. We wouldn't normally have considered the toxicity element of materials being used. Our emerging plan will have better supportive policies for it, but you may want to think about a condition that deals with the colour, the material type and the toxicity, and we'll see what we can negotiate with the applicant. Thank you, Chair.
Do we have any other questions from members? Councillor Towns.
Thank you, Chair. I was just checking the conditions about the footpath because I noticed the objection from the Parish Council is that a right-of-way has already been redirected without consultation. Walkers must walk through a field potentially containing up to 12 horses. Seeing in the conditions it says safe and clear public access to the public right-of-way should be maintained at all times, and I think that addresses the concerns of the public rights-of-way officer. But I just have a question: do we have any further information on this suggestion that the right-of-way has already been redirected without consultation? That's news to me.
I believe outside of the application there were some issues with the right-of-way, and the applicant misunderstood the comments and was set to alter the right-of-way. I believe that has been rectified, but that is something that was outside of this application. They're applying solely for the riding arena, as seen on the plans, that enclosure and that surfacing. As part of this application, they're not proposing any new fencing outside of the arena, and they're not proposing to divert any hard surfacing or any existing tracks or routes through the site.
Can I just remind everyone when they are talking, if they're going to be looking around, sometimes the microphone doesn't actually pick up the voice if you turn your head. So it's just so it's picked up for the live feed. If you are going to turn to speak, maybe move the microphone with you, please. Do we have any other questions? No, questions are exhausted. Okay, do we have any recommendation, any motions with regards to the application, please? Councillor Dodd. Councillor Dodd, can I just ask, there has been talk about condition. Are you looking to deal with that condition, or do you want to move it as the conditions stand in the report?
That says this material is toxic. Is it toxic? Someone said it's toxic. I don't know if it is or it isn't.
Can anyone answer that, please?
Councillor, you're correct. We don't know whether the material is toxic, but we do know that the proposed material is rubber, and maybe there is a more environmentally friendly or greener product available, or perhaps you want us to have discussions, add a condition about the materials, that we could add a condition for
There
it.
are a lot of arenas around this area.
Councillor,
Northumberland.
can you use your microphone, please?
There are a lot of arenas around this area, this county, and I'm not familiar with, you know, some might be bark, some might be what, but I mean, I'm told, unless somebody says to me that we are putting toxic material down, I have to take it that this has gone through a process with an officer, and that these rubber arenas are, you know, okay. So I'm going to leave it without any conditions, because I don't think it's really in the interest of this application to get it off the shelf. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dodd. So we have a recommendation for planning application to be granted subject to the existing conditions in the report. Do we have anyone to second that, please? Councillor Wearmouth.
Thank you, Chair. I am happy to second that. I don't think that there's anything to demonstrate that this substance is in any way toxic. I play football regularly on bits of rubber all of the time, and you know, the fact that it's available as a product suggests that it isn't the case. If there's a particularly strong feeling from my other colleagues on the committee, then I would be happy to support some form of wording that said that the final material was agreed by officers, but I'm not particularly happy to support something that precludes something that probably isn't toxic.
Thank you. So we now open this for debate. Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, I think it isn't just toxicity. I think we also spoke about the visual impact, and I think that's very significant. And I think the fact that it has been raised and that a member of the public is saying to us that she has evidence that, you know, the toxins within the rubber leach into the soil, that sounds fairly sensible to me. I don't think there's any harm at all in us looking further into perhaps there is a better material. I'm not saying the rubber's fatal. I'm simply saying there could be a better material which has less of a detrimental visual impact as well. And why not look into that? Thanks.
Councillor Bainan.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I agree totally with what the councillor just said. If we can look into it, other materials, not just for the toxic side, but also for the colouring side, I would be happy with that. Thanks, Chair.
Anybody else like to contribute? Councillor Darwin.
Yeah, I too would just like to err on the side of caution. We don't know what the toxicity, if it is toxicity, so I think getting a report and putting that as a condition of materials, I think would be a sensible way forward, particularly given the fact that we are trying to improve the landscape as well and the materials that we use in construction. We don't know either way, so I think it'd be sensible to have that as a condition posed, and I'd support a condition on that. But not this one. Thank you.
Do you have any other comments? Councillor Towns.
Thank you, Chair. It was a quite comprehensive report with a very comprehensive recommendation, and I think we stare failure at appeal down the barrel of that particular gun if we don't approve this today. But I think what's being suggested is that there might be an opportunity to reduce the impact and allay some of the fears that have been expressed by the objectors, and as the local member I would like that to be given an opportunity as well. So I don't know if we do that by coming up with a wording of condition that the material and perhaps the colour of the material is to be agreed by officers, and obviously the nature of the material is to be looked at, or if possible, and it's perhaps overkill on this one, but do we seek a deferral and go back to the applicant to see if they're willing to provide a bit more information on the surface material? Thank you.
Chair, could I just come in on that, if that's okay? So, yes, I think there are two issues here that are coming out through the debate. and obviously your proposal doesn't include either of those right now. With respect to the colour, the applicant could come forward with a lighter colour of rubber, and then you've still got the toxic element. Colour is definitely something that, as a planning authority, we would be more interested in because of the impact on the landscape of the colour. In terms of toxicity, we don't have planning policies on that, and it could potentially be an appealable part of the condition. But even if you are to control the colour, it still may continue to be a rubber product or an alternative toxic product as well. I don't know if that helps any further, but that's just to make you understand the difference between the two things. You're looking at colour and the toxic element of the product. Colour, you can justify that with planning policy. The toxicity is more difficult, and it would certainly be difficult for us to assess what would be the right product. What are the toxic levels? We're not qualified in this sort of thing to be able to even discharge that condition. So, and as I say, it could be appealable as well.
Thank you. Councillor Wearmouth, and then I'll come back to Councillor Towns.
Thank you. If Councillor Dodd was prepared to amend his proposal just to say that the final materials will be agreed in writing with the council planning department, I think that would cover a lot of this, and I'm sure that could be, the comments can be captured here and considered by officers as part of the proper process. Councillor Dodd, I'm happy to second if you're prepared to propose that.
I shall do that to get this over the line, but I think there comes a time when we have to say, when we go through planning applications, we have to have faith in that officers or the products that are being discussed. I mean, as far as I know, this rubber will be tyres recycled and chopped up. Now, we could have them painted, which would be more toxic. So I'm happy to propose that with the condition that officers sort it out. Thank you.
Councillor Towns.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think that's sensible. I was just going to reiterate the point that Councillor Wearmouth made before. Any product that's being sold commercially on the open market for surfacing these arenas, these menages, we'd have to have faith that they've gone through rigorous testing and they're on the market because they're not toxic, because they are safe. My concern is about the visual impact and the effect on what is, every planning meeting we have questions about green belt, and we all have to get our head around what's suitable and what's not suitable. And a big black square in the middle of the green belt, to me, just is slightly incongruous with that. But if we can control that colour and lessen the impact as much as possible in the way that's being proposed, then I could support that.
Do we have any other comments? No.
Just to clarify before we go to the vote that it is a recommendation for approval, and that there's an additional condition, final materials to be agreed with the local planning authority, but that the wording to be delegated to the Director of Planning in consultation with the Chair.
You took the words right out my mouth. So I'll make mine a bit shorter now. Proposed by Councillor Dodd with the additional condition which has just been quite succinctly put, and also seconded by Councillor Wearmouth. So on that basis, happy to go to the vote. So all those in favour, please raise your hand, and if you can keep your hand up till we know it's all counted, please. Thank you. Anyone against? Any abstentions? Okay, application has been approved. Thank you. Okay, the next application is on page 33. It's application number 21, Oblique 01703, Oblique FUL. and this is retrospective works to dwellings, including the removal of carport and garage, alterations to roof, windows and door openings, and construction of outbuilding. And if I can hand you over to Ryan for any updates and the presentation, please.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Yep, so this application seeks retrospective planning permission for various alterations and extensions to the residential property recognised as Greenfield House, Hepscott. The application site is located within the settlement of Hepscott, south of Hepscott Burn. The local planning authority has previously granted planning permission for the construction of 2 dwellings to the east and west of the existing property. These proposed elevations and site plan reflect the site at present following completion of the works. The outbuilding is located to the southern boundary. The outbuilding would be across 2 floors with vehicle storage at ground floor level. No indication of the use at first floor level has been given, but a condition has been attached to ensure that the use of the outbuilding remains ancillary to that of the main dwelling. And these photographs show the application site from the street scene and within the site itself. Following submission of additional information, the local authority's ecologist raised no objection to the application subject to a recommended condition. Therefore, the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out within the officer report.
Thank you, Ryan. We now move on to the public speaking part, and we have no objectors speaking on this application. So we move on to
I'm sorry. Yes, there is somebody speaking. Did you say public speaking?
Yes, I'm talking about just the standard objector. I'm
I'm
moving
sorry.
on to the other
Sorry.
parties. Can you just turn your microphone off for the moment, please? Thank you. So we have no objector. We do have a slot for the parish town councillors, and we have a representative from Hepscott Parish Council, Philip Ashmore. Your time will start as soon as you start speaking. Thank you.
Sorry for that, Madam Chair. Too early. Yes, I'm Philip Ashmore, Chair of Hepscott Parish Council. I want to address only one remaining issue of this application, the issue of village and neighbour amenity, and in particular ecological amenity. It's a material planning consideration and referred to in condition 3. It's dreadful what this application and its aftermath has done to the green wildlife corridor of the Hepscott Burn, formed and supposedly protected by the Morpeth neighbourhood plan. This once lovely wooded site occupies 1.2 acres in the centre of the wildlife corridor. The removal of more than 25 mature trees and the bird habitat and the destruction of the bat colony has seriously diminished the villagers' amenity. But there is something in the final act of this play, or is it tragedy, that you can actually do to regain some of that lost amenity. That something is condition 3. Condition 3 is about mitigation for the destruction of a bat colony, when the applicant knew that by removing the roof of this building, he would destroy that colony. He fully knew that to do so was literally a criminal act. Condition 3, as proposed, states, within 6 months from the date of the planning consent, a monitoring report shall be submitted to the local planning authority that demonstrates through clear and photographic evidence and a site visit by a suitably qualified ecologist that all mitigation has been implemented as designed. That's fine as far as it goes, except we all know in this room that is just not going to happen. The overwhelming evidence shows it. 1, the mitigation in putting up bird and bat boxes as prescribed has still not happened 15 months after the outline permission was granted. 2, the applicant has been reported to the police in 2020 for his destruction of the bat roost, by no less than the Planning Authority, NCC, a year ago, but nothing seems to have happened since. 3, the police do not appear to see it as a priority. As an NCC officer has said, we call the police and leave messages, but they never call us back. 4, a pre-commencement planning condition was placed on the outline application last year, condition 9. It said that, quote, no development shall take place unless in accordance with the mitigation measures detailed in the ecological report. Development has started, but still no mitigation measures. 5, in June 2021, NCC's own ecology department said, due to the loss of the bat roost, which is considered a significant impact, the requirement for further details on the mitigation measures should not be left to a planning condition. Yet here we are with just that situation. I could go on, but you get the picture. Our request is very simple. Ensure that the mitigation measures are pre-commencement, carried out before any further work on site begins. I repeat, please ensure the mitigation measures are pre-commencement. This committee can't restore the bat roost or bring back felled trees to life, but you can help restore a little amenity to the village and the wildlife corridor and ensure by rewording condition 3, the mitigation measures are carried out and before further work is started. It's the only way that those measures will ever be implemented. With this amendment to condition 3, Hepscott Parish Council would not oppose this retrospective application. Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to the next public speaker, which is a supporter, Hannah Wafer. Your time starts as soon as you start to speak. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members. This application seeks retrospective planning permission to the works to Greenfield House. The works relate to an existing residential property and the principle of development in this location is considered acceptable. All technical matters relevant to the development, such as ecology, drainage and highways, have been addressed and are suitable subject to conditions. There are no objections before you other than from the Parish Council. It is understood that the Parish Council have concerns with regards to the scale of the works on site and the works carried out prior to permission being granted. The applicant wishes to note that whilst the development will result in an increase in the height of the dwelling, it is considered suitable for the surrounding area and the development is of a similar scale to the properties permitted within the outline and the reserved matters applications. Whilst the works have been carried out without consent, the applicant is taking steps to rectify this and they wish to state the works to the roof were carried out following advice that the roof was rotting and dangerous. The proposed development has been assessed by the planning officers who have afforded appropriate weight to planning policy and subsequently found the development to be acceptable. With regards to the ecology on site, whilst a bat roost has been impacted, we have provided ecology plans to mitigate these concerns and they are to be secured via a condition. The applicant therefore requests that members grant consent in accordance with the planning officer's recommendation.
Thank you. We now move on to members' questions to planning officers, and Councillor Wearmouth's in there nice and early.
Thank you. I'm a bit nerdy on these things sometimes. Right. With respect to the comments that have been made from the parish regarding this sort of, that something has to happen before anything else can happen, we're considering, if I'm not mistaken, a retrospective planning permission, not the wider planning permission, and we can't reopen previous decisions and attach conditions to them such that we could stop work happening on any of the other properties on that land. So can I just confirm that whilst it's a laudable comment from the parish, it's not actually one that legally that we can enforce, and that therefore the best that we can do is give as many teeth as possible to condition 3 and to ensure and encourage officers to actually to follow it up and to impose it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. We've been unable to attach a pre-commencement condition to this application as the works have already been completed on site. And like you say, through this application, we can't alter conditions attached to sort of any previous planning permissions. I would agree with the statement that it's something that our enforcement team would need to investigate at a later date if it was the case where following the expiration of 6 months that condition then hadn't been discharged. So yeah, it's ultimately something that our enforcement team would have to deal with through their methods.
Thank you. Do we have, yep. Yes, Councillor Sanderson. You can tell when I'm
I
having a
wonder if
mental
I could
blank.
ask the planning officer a question about the 6 months. Why 6 months? Why not, given the history here, why not make it 3 months? And then at least we can find a happy compromise, well, a compromise at least, that meets the concerns of the parish council, whose concerns I think are perfectly reasonable, and we should try to accommodate insofar as we're able.
Yeah, absolutely. If members felt a more appropriate time frame would be within 3 months of the date of the permission, we can amend that condition if that was felt necessary. I believe the ecologist thought that 6 months would be a necessary time frame, but if members did want to alter that can be done as part of this application.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, Councillor Towns.
Just a quick one, because it's one of my bugbears, one of my many bugbears. Why is this retrospective? What confusion was there that meant the applicant didn't realise they had to apply for planning permission for all of this in the first place?
So, yeah, this is retrospective because you can see from the photographs that the work's already commenced and are just about complete. It is, and again, I know members, it's never ideal, but this is actually an example of good planning enforcement in that what we have to set out to do is, once a breach like this occurs, is to consider whether it can be regularised through a planning application or not. In this case, we were of the view that it could be regularised through the retrospective application of the consent, and that's what we've got before you today. It may have been that something else could have been built on the site that wasn't acceptable and couldn't be regularised, and we would have taken more formal enforcement steps. But on this one, it retrospectively complies with our policies, and that's why we're recommending approval.
Councillor Towns.
Thank you for that, and I get the point, and I take the point on enforcement. And one step of enforcement is regularising, but it is a bugbear of mine because this work has been done without planning permission when it was pretty darn obvious that there should have been planning permission, and yet here we are. Our choice, if this work had not been done, our choice could have been to have sought to amend this, to condition it further, to have said no, to have said yes, and now you're given a choice of, well, do you have to make someone demolish work that they've already done, which also isn't a great thing to have to force. I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I'll just presumably just get ignored again, but I think if this council has any power to do so, we should be trebling the fees on retrospective planning applications or quadrupling them, because I'm absolutely sick to my back teeth of seeing flagrant breaches of planning where people frankly either don't care or don't pay enough attention, and then we're just sat here having to rubber stamp things that have already happened. Thank you.
Do we have
Chair, could I just come back
certainly.
on that point? So the first point to make, members, is I know it's not ideal, retrospective planning applications, but what you've got to appreciate is there is a piece of legislation that allows them to be submitted, and you mustn't allow the fact that it's retrospective to colour how you assess this application. It is not, unfortunately, it is not a material consideration when you come to consider this. So you just got to assess it against policy. With respect to the context of this, Councillor Towns, we do understand that the applicant thought the work they were doing was permitted development work. You will know that permitted development rights for sites such as this can be extensive. An awful lot of work can be done under the umbrella of permitted development, and the site owner here thought that that's what they were doing. Once we learnt of it and picked up a dialogue, they have worked with us and submitted this application. So I just thought it was worth highlighting those 2 points, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions? No? Okay. Do we have a proposal from the floor, please? Councillor Sanderson.
I'd like to propose that we go along with this, but that we alter the 6 months to 3 months. And it may be useful potentially for a note to be sent to Jan Willis, who does our budgeting for us, just raising the point about charging for planning, particularly around retrospective planning, because no matter how much a gloss might be put onto going ahead with development, and how much one kind of has pity or sympathy, the fact is that it is very distressing for members of this committee to have to deal with retrospective planning decisions when so many others have to go through a long process and procedure and follow it to the letter. So I will ask that we look at that when it comes to our budget proposals for this coming year. I think it's a good suggestion by Councillor Town. So my question is, I'd like to formally propose this, but with that amendment, please.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson.
Chair,
Do we have...
Just before we go, because I'm conscious that the second part of the amendment was about the fee that they charge. No. So just to be clear about that, they are government set. So there is no control for us here to be able to reset that at a fee commensurate with the amount of work that's involved with retrospective applications. I'm afraid it's how it is.
Thank you. So may I just come back just to clarify that? There should have been a semicolon or a full stop, perhaps. I've made my request for amendment. On fees, we should be, if that is the case, we should be lobbying government, and that is what we will do. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. So we have a proposal for approval on the basis that that condition is changed from 6 months to 3 months and all the other conditions stand. Is that correct, Councillor Sanderson? Do we have anyone to second that proposal, please? Councillor Wearmouth. Thank you. And we now move into debate. Would anybody like to add anything? Councillor Bainham.
Thanks, Chair. I totally agree with all the comments that Councillor Towns made. In fact, I made the same comments to Liz in the pre-meeting, and my question was going to be what yours was, and I got the same explanation, which clarifies it for councillors, because I think we do get annoyed that people do the work and then they come back for planning permission. But it was very eloquently explained to me. Not that I liked the explanation, but we got the explanation that a lot of us didn't actually realise.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to add to the debate? No? Yes, Councillor Dunn.
Yes, thanks. It's just in connection with condition 3 being changed from 6 months to 3. I mean, would that be acceptable as far as the ecological officer was concerned, or was it set with that 6 month limit for a particular reason?
Liz, all right?
Yeah, Chair, I'm happy to come back on that. I did wonder, actually, when this change to the discussion was suggested, whether we actually ask for a report at 3 months and at 6 months, so twice over, so that we can be satisfied that the monitoring work is ongoing and have some follow-up there as well. And maybe that might work better, and it may help the ecologist. There might not be sufficient information at 3 months, but certainly they might expect to see more at 6 months, and indeed you might want to add on a 9 months there as well. I don't know, but that's just a thought that I've had in respect of that. Councillor Dunn.
Councillor Sanderson, do you want to come back on that?
Whilst I appreciate the points made by the councillor, the fact is that we are a planning authority. We're dealing here with the requests of the parish council that there should be measures taken to ensure that some discipline is followed with this. If we're not completely clear about the 3 months, then I have to say, having been aware of some of the issues at this site, I think the parish council possibly are correct in their concerns. So I really do feel a little bit of backbone here is necessary, and let's say 3 months. And if for any reason an ecologist or whoever else finds that it's completely impossible to meet that timescale, then we can. Happy for officers to look at that again. But if we're not firm on this, then we just have to be. We have to be firm. So please, can we stick to my original proposal, please?
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, my question is the legal issue, really. I think I'm a bit confused as to why isn't a criminal act a material consideration in terms of retrospective planning permission? If it has been evidenced that an applicant has broken the law to achieve their objective, why isn't that a material consideration in when we come to decide whether this is a legitimate and acceptable planning application or not? So if somebody, and I'm not saying this has happened, I'm repeating what has been said today, somebody removes a roof and bats escape, and everybody knows that that's illegal, and then they put a nicer roof on that they like and that fits with their criteria, and then come to us and we say, well, yes, your new roof meets our criteria, therefore we will approve it. But what happened to the activity that actually created that in the first place? It's a wider issue for me in terms of when an applicant's behaviour becomes a material consideration in terms of them obtaining their objective.
Okay, so we have discussed it in the report because in some respects it is a material consideration because our ecologist wanted to see that bat roost protected. In fact, the applicant's own ecologist also recorded what was there and wanted to see that protected. So it is material. But when you come to your decision making on a planning application, you put, everything on the scales. And the most important thing that we look at is the principle of what they're applying for. So this increase in roof height and the building, and our planning policies say that is acceptable. Now, what you can do is then think about whether there are other material considerations. And you're mentioning this ecology breach here that we're aware of, but that wouldn't be sufficient to offset that very strong in favour balance of the material of the in principle policy position that would support the application. I know it's not always easy to take into account, and with respect to the ecological breach, there is separate legislation followed up by the police that deals with that separately. So yes, it is material, but we wouldn't be advising or recommending to you to give it more weight than what our policy position is about the principle of what they've applied for. Okay.
Councillor Wearmouth.
Thanks. I was going to make some similar comments, and you've got to be careful. I think that it's not for us to decide what the law is or not. If there's something in the hands of the police, then if our officers feel that there's something to be dealt with by the police, then they should be encouraging that. I think just to speak to Councillor Sanderson's point about 3 months, I think that the thing that we can do here is all of this mitigation work, presumably back boxes and all of the things that are entailed in the plan. If we can have it implemented as quickly as is practical and hold to account the owner and developer to get that in place as fast as is practically possible, then that's probably the most that I feel that we can do on this. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else who would like to contribute before going to the vote? No? Okay, that's fine. So we have the recommendation from Councillor Sanderson with the amendment to change it from 6 months to 3 months on, I think it was condition 3, I think it was. Yep, and that's been seconded by Councillor Wearmouth. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And the next application on page 41. Application number 21, Oblique 01426, Oblique FUL. Change of use of land and the siting of a repurposed train carriage to provide 2-number holiday let properties at land south of Ivankill, Station Road, Standington, Northumberland. Again, if I can just check everyone has seen the site visit videos, please. Yep, that's fine.
Can I just ask, right at the beginning, what is a repurposed? Doubtless you might mention it, but can you just right up front, what is that? A repurposed carriage?
Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a structure which has previously been used as a train carriage, no longer in use, and the applicant is intending to use the structure, taking out all the internals to accommodate holiday let use internally within the structure. I've got photographs on the presentation which might show it a bit clearer.
Okay, so at this point, if I can hand over to Ryan, who will go through any updates and to present the report, please.
Yep, thank you, Chair. Just as an update to members prior to the commencement of the presentation, the Local Planning Authority consider it necessary that if the application were to be approved, a planning condition be attached upon any approval solely restricting the use of the structure for holiday let purposes. The condition would read, the development hereby approved shall solely be used for the purposes of holiday let accommodation and shall not be used for any other purpose unless written approval from the Local Planning Authority advises otherwise. And that is just to restrict the use to holiday let approval only. On to the presentation. This application seeks planning permission for the siting and repurposing of a train carriage to be used for holiday let purposes. Whilst the carriage has recently been delivered to the site due to delivery constraints, the use has not been implemented on site. The application site is located upon Station Road, Standington. It is bounded by build form to the north and east and also to the west beyond the railway lines. The Station Road public highway runs adjacent to the site to the south. The proposed site plan shows the layout of the site and the separation distance is retained to existing residential properties. Car parking would be located adjacent to the site entrance, with highways raising no objection to this arrangement. These site photographs show the development from outside of the site. The majority of the carriage is screened by existing boundary treatments such as fencing and soft landscaping. And these site photographs show the development from within the site and the proximity of the structure in comparison with the existing dwellings and the railway line. The application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions set out within the officer report and an additional condition restricting the use of the structure for holiday let purposes.
Thank you, Ryan. We don't have any speakers for this application, so we'll move straight on to members' questions to planning officers. Who would like to start? Councillor Darwin.
Hi there, thank you. I noticed this is on Greenbelt in the document. I take it this won't be changed from Greenbelt to Brownfield site or anything like that. And another question is on Station Road. It was put forward that highways is going to reduce the speed limit from 40 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour. That hasn't gone through as yet, and that this entrance to this site is just off the crossing on Station Road, which would cause hazards for people turning left or coming out of this site entrance. Can this be deferred at all until that highways is reduced from 40 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour?
Yep, so just in terms of the first question, yeah, you're absolutely right. The site would remain sort of green belt for the moment. The development wouldn't sort of remove the green belt allocation upon the land in terms of the policy S5 of the plan, which is in place at the moment. In terms of deferral of the application, we've consulted with sort of our highways team as part of this application, who are assessing the details as sort of the land is at present. They've raised no objection to the application subject to recommended conditions, and they didn't consider that there would be any impact upon highway safety through use of the existing access. So yeah, highways have raised no objection to it at the moment.
Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, my question relates to the part of the report that is about design and visual character. I have to say, when I read the title of this, Change of Use of Land and the Siting of a Repurposed Train Carriage, I was picturing the Railway Children. I really wasn't picturing an Intercity 125. I have to say, I think it's absolutely hideous, and I'm just astonished that that doesn't come out in that section of the report. I think there's a bit where it says it's an unusual addition to the locality. I would say that's the understatement of the year. I think it's absolutely hideous, and I agree with what the Parish Council said about the visual for people who can see. I know it's not on the main street, but it is still visible, and it is an eyesore as far as I'm concerned. And I think the fact that there is a train station close to it is absolutely irrelevant. It doesn't suit the countryside. So, my view, sorry. The question was, how come the person who wrote that visual amenity bit doesn't have a problem with that?
Well, design's obviously a subjective sort of issue, and it's assessed by sort of different people in sort of different ways. I respect sort of your comments that sort of some people may not consider it to be good design, and that the Parish Council did raise concerns regarding visual amenity. There is also a policy which is referenced in the Standington neighbourhood plan in terms of good design. Ultimately, the decision would come to members in terms of whether or not they think that that would cause harm to the visual amenity of the area. I think one sort of matter that we would wish to raise is that, as can be seen from sort of the previous site photographs, the site isn't readily visible within sort of the public domain from the Standington Station Road public highway, so it's not until you're actually within the site itself that the train carriage is actually sort of visible, which would obviously form part of the visual amenity assessment. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The final decision would come to members in terms of the visual amenity of the area.
Councillor Towns.
Thank you, Chair. I have to agree with Councillor Murphy. When I saw the title of this on my papers, I thought, oh, a lovely old railway carriage, that'll be pretty. And then it's, in my personal opinion, it's not. Also, the access, two issues with that. It looks, well, if that's what's planned, it looks very temporary, I have to say. But also, I do question, it doesn't, and I can't see in the report anywhere, anything about accessibility for disabled users. Are we not meant to be encouraging compliance with Disability Discrimination Act and matters like that? It doesn't look, as holiday lets, it doesn't look accessible, I have to say. So have we given thought to that, and are we able to take that into account as a material planning consideration?
Yeah. So if I deal with the last point first, which is the Equality Act, you'll see in the report we do consider the Equality Act. Quite often disabled access is picked up through the building control process, but and it may be that that the applicant has thought about that. From the plans that we've got, it may be that it is not accessible for disabled people. So you could ask for a condition with something more specific so that there's a ramped access to it for disabled access. If that's what you would like, we could add that as a condition.
Councillor Wearmouth.
Thank you. I entirely agree with Councillor Murphy and Councillor Towns. I was envisaging something a lot different. It's rather hideous, to be honest, and I'm not convinced that you don't see it or won't see it, especially if you're sat on the top of a double-decker bus waiting for the 4th train to go past at Standington Station crossing, which I have done many times in the past. I was a little bit surprised, and it might be buried in the many conditions in here, just about the finish, and I don't know, is it intended that it's staying that colour? And is it going to stay that colour for very long if you don't keep painting it? Because I think that the materials look pretty much like they could degrade over time, and so I would just be wanting to see if there was anything that we might be wanting to add in addition to the conditions that officers have proposed to cover that. Thank you.
Yeah, in terms of sort of the external finish, the applicant hasn't proposed sort of any alteration to that. The works are solely in terms of the internal sort of aspect of it. Sort of issues in terms of sort of maintenance and upkeep of external sort of elevations can be undertaken through sort of permitted development rights if it's just repairs on or sort of maintenance on a like-for-like basis. But if members felt that it was necessary to attach conditions in terms of an alteration to the external finish or external colouring, that could be added as a condition if we were to approve the application.
Thanks. So, literally, they could paint it any colour that they want, and we don't have any control over that. So I think when we get on to the next bit, I think that's something I would be just wanting to suggest we impose. Thank you.
Councillor Sanderson.
Could I just also have some clarification about the visual aspect of it? Is it because this is proposed to be fairly close to a railway line that it's somehow acceptable? If it was on the outskirts of Morpeth, would it then not be acceptable? And how does that follow necessarily with other potential developments? I'm not quite clear on this point, so if you could clarify, I'd be most grateful.
Okay, so just looking at the principle of the development, first of all, so that is the concept of holiday accommodation in this location. The two principal planning policy aspects that we look at are whether it complies with the principle of development. And what we say here is that our plans and the Castle Morpeth plan supports tourism accommodation. There is also the greenbelt aspect to it, and again what we're saying is that this is an acceptable infill and it meets one of the exceptions in the greenbelt policy. So, you know, we always talk about the principle of the development where we are. What we're saying is your principal planning policies support this development. So you're quite right to focus now the conversation on just try and... Can you hear me okay? Yeah, that's it, back on again. So you're right to focus on that, and that is a material consideration that you may decide outweighs those other in-principle considerations. And we'll talk about then other aspects that you might want to use to mitigate any harm as well, if you felt that that was better. But just... No, yeah, that's it. Just going back to the setting of the area, Councillor Sanderson, yes, given that it's on Station Road and it's adjacent to the railway line, there is some connectivity there to what the Standington neighbourhood plan describes as what you would want to try and achieve in the setting of an area. I realise that it's not what everybody thinks, and I know many of you have discussed what in your mind you thought the railway carriage might look like. Compared to the very modern railway carriage that's proposed here. So you could decide to refuse it on that basis, or you could decide that you could have more robust landscaping conditions so that it cannot be seen. You could add a condition to suggest that if it's no longer used, that they're taken away. And you can add conditions about the maintenance of the units and the colour as well. So yes, Councillor Sanderson, we did consider the location of the area, and it wouldn't be suitable in all locations, but this one we did take the view that it would be right.
Can I just come back then, just so I'm clear? So if we've been talking about Hepscott recently. So if we think about Tranmere Woods, for example, a place where all the houses are sort of really big, like 6, 7, 8 bedroom houses. But one of the owners wanted to build a holiday cottage, and we wanted to encourage that because of our views on tourism. Would that then mean that because it's in Hepscott or Tranmere Woods, it would have to be a 4 or 6 or 8 bedroomed house because it is similar to the other properties just because it's in that area, just as this might be seen because it's next to a railway line, it's therefore in keeping?
That's quite a hard question, because you're just sort of not comparing apples and pears there. You know what? So just to take it back to the start of this, the Tranmere Woods, it's very different in terms of, you know, the policy protections and the in principle policies that are there. What we're saying here is, just looking at the site, it's acceptable because of its location on Station Road, and it's acceptable because the policy for tourism encourages it, and it's considered an infill plot. It may not carry that same assessment if it were in Tranmere Woods. So I wouldn't really like to compare it. We're just asking you today to see if you would follow our line of thinking, which is that these are railway carriages in what we say is an in principle suitable location, beside a railway line on Station Road, which we say does follow that railway theme. You may not take the same view, and that's what I'm saying. You can decide to go against officer recommendation on that justification.
Councillor Towns.
Thank you, Chair. Just one question on conditions. Liz mentioned possibility of conditioning that if it ceases to be used, that the carriage has to be taken away and the site restored. Would that be on the basis of, say, it ceased to be used for the permitted use for 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, a period of time like that? Thank you.
Yes, we probably could say something like along those lines, give a period of time for the use to cease, and then for it to be taken away.
Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, it's a shame we don't have the applicant here, because I'm really always interested in people's rationale for why they do things, and I'm just curious as to why it's not a couple of shepherd's huts, which, you know, we all support the idea that you know, we want to develop tourism and it's an ideal site for it. The parish council has said the same, they don't have a problem with it. Why this? There's got to be a reason. Was it just, you know, it was a bargain on eBay, and they've decided to go for it. Now, I accept that once it's refurbished, inside it'll probably look amazing, but outside it looks awful. And I do think that if we are going to approve this, and presumably they spent good money on it, we look at the external appearance of it and they make it more muted, more fitting with the surroundings, perhaps quite quaint in the way that it's painted and decorated outside, at an absolute minimum for the poor people who have to go past that. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions to planning officers? No. Do we have a proposal from the floor? Councillor Towns.
Thank you, Chair. I'll propose accepting the officer's recommendation. Looking at the drawings in the pack, I think that does allay some of the fears about the landscaping and the visual aspects of it. However, I want to see some additional conditions, as has been kind of discussed. The first of which, I think we need a condition about the external appearance of the train carriage, and I'll be interested to hear other councillors' views on that. But certainly, I would want it to be maintained, because, you know, quite often when you're on the train going down, you see train carriages that have been standing for a while, and they've got kind of moss on the roofs, and the windows are looking very shabby. And, you know, we want it. I'm quite sure the owners would want to keep it looking nice if it's being run as a business, but I think we need to condition that. The landscaping has been mentioned, so I think we need to have ensure that the conditions as to landscaping are robust and are quite categorically stated to be about meaning that the carriage itself is not seen from the road or from residential properties. I would like there to be a condition that the carriage is removed and the site is restored back to this kind of green space if holiday lets cease for a continuous period of 12 months or more. And I would also like, I mean, I can see on the drawing there's at least two parking spaces for disabled use, and yet there's no disabled access to the either end of the train carriage. So I think there's room there for there to be a ramp rather than steps. It looks like steps on the drawing. So I would also like a condition that there is suitable access for disabled people, so that we as an authority are complying with our with the requirements on us under the Equality Act, and that the applicant is complying with the Disability Discrimination Act. Subject to those conditions, I would move approval.
Thank you. Melanie, do you want to get
can
those
I-
clarified a bit
yes,
clearer?
Yes, please. So it's to grant planning permission with the existing conditions as updated by Ryan at the beginning, because there was already an additional condition about keeping it as a holiday let and not for any other use. So you've got your condition about external appearance in respect of the train carriage and the maintenance of it. Is that correct? I'll come back to Liz in a minute. The second condition that you mentioned was about robust landscaping, and that the carriage would not be visible from the road or residential properties, or any residential properties. The third is that if the holiday let ceases to be used of continuous use for a period of 12 months or more, that the carriage will be removed and the land will be restored to green space. And lastly, you're requesting a condition about a suitable disabled access required. So in terms of those additional conditions, Liz, do you want to mention anything in particular, or are you happy for the precise wording of those to be delegated to the Director of Planning in conjunction with the Chair? Or
Yeah. So first off, I would recommend that that they're delegated so we can fine tune those wordings. I just wanted to check back on the external appearance to be maintained. So just to be clear, that is its current external appearance as it is in those paint colours, as it is at the moment that you see on the slides, because that's what we would be asking for here. Or are you wanting it painted in a particular colour?
No, I understand what some other councillors have said. The condition I've proposed is about keeping it in good condition and maintaining it, the upkeep and condition in a good condition. It's not allowed to get covered in moss and have paint peeling off it and everything else, as these things are apt to do when they stand still. The livery of it it might be chosen because it's perhaps the applicants are thinking that railway enthusiasts will want to stay in it, rather than someone looking for a quaint cottage that actually is a former railway carriage. It might be that people who are actually interested in railways want to come and stay there. So I don't want to be that prescriptive about, as long as it's not seen, because the landscaping condition should deal with that. As long as it's not seen from anywhere else, it is what it is. Some people don't like it, some people will love it. Different choices, different opinions. But I want it to be kept looking clean and tidy. That's really what I mean by that condition.
Councillor Darwin.
I would like to second that motion, but I'd just like to see Councillor Townsend amend it slightly, in that, given that the condition of no longer used, then taken away for 12 months, that's it, no 12 months and more, because that could then go on and on. So if it's not used within 12 months, we can then seek for that to be removed. Otherwise, I think it would just go on and on, not being used for a long period of time.
Absolutely.
So I'd just like to be definitive on that time frame.
Councillor Wearmouth.
Thank you. I'm happy enough to support that, but can I just have clarification on the appearance bit? Because I think that basically you could maintain it, but you could maintain it to look like anything. So you could, one day of the week, you could decide that you were really into graffiti art and have it as a really interesting but rather unusual appearing in the countryside piece of art. Another time you might paint it luminous green, another day you might use some heritage colours, and another day you might keep it as it is. So I think what I was trying to drive at was the appearance of it is agreed, and then it is maintained. And I don't care what colour it is or anything like that, so long as the officers are happy. But there has to be something from the outset that says what it's going to look like, because at the moment there isn't.
Councillor Murphy.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, but I would still like to say, to add within the condition, ask the applicant to consider making it look more visually appealing. It's up to them how they interpret that and what the officers then do with that, but I would at least like to ask them to consider it.
Councillor Darwin.
Can I just add to that? If we say maintain the condition, can we say that they maintain it as its current condition? If they want to change it, they come back to ask for approval. Because then they could have it pink, bright yellow, any colour. So I think we can't state what colour they would want it now. They've presented this application as it stands. I think we can only say they keep it and maintain it as it stands. If they want a variation, they have to come back for that variation. Is that something that we can enforce? Otherwise, we go around the bush of what colours we get.
Okay, Chair. So what we could work up as a condition to that that the units are maintained in the colour that they are now, and that they continue with the maintenance and upkeep of them. So I think that would be the first condition. Would that address the first condition that you've proposed, Councillor Towns? The second condition that you mentioned was with respect to landscaping being robust. We do have a condition 7 there, which we think addresses that, but would you like that added to in any respect?
Thank you, Liz. I obviously I've seen condition 7. What I was getting at there was it could be made slightly more robust and to say that the carriage will not be visible from the highway, or because of the landscaping, the carriage will not be visible from the highway or from any other third-party residential property. Obviously, it will be visible from the applicant's property behind it. But that's their property.
If I can just ask Liz, I don't know, in respect of that, I don't know what that drawing is. So would that cover Councillor Town's concerns? Would it make it not visible from the road, and would it make it not visible from any residential properties? Otherwise, it probably would still need something additional in.
Yeah, so they're proposing high density planting along the southern boundary, which is the fencing which can be seen sort of there between the applicant's property and the Station Road public highway. In terms of a condition, I think it may be difficult for us to enforce that the planting ensures that it isn't visible from sort of the public highway or any third party land. We could request that additional planting be incorporated along the western boundary, along the railway line boundary. But yeah, I'm not sure if Liz has any further comments on the condition.
I think that's right. You know, we're talking about trees. Sometimes they fail. What that condition will always do will ensure that they've got to replant if there are any tree failures. But there may well be some deciduous planting in there, thick as it might be, and you may get glimpses. And I think it would be a step too far, possibly, to suggest that that it's to be unseen. But at least we know that the intention of the applicant is to have the site well screened. We've got a condition there. It's ensuring that it's maintained for the lifetime of the development. And I think it's from those key locations that you've got concerns about.
Yes, I mean, just to move things on, then I can withdraw the proposal for that particular landscaping condition, and we'll rely on condition 7 if officers are happy that kind of does the trick anyway.
Are you happy with that, Councillor?
Yes, I'm happy with that condition as well. Yep.
Councillor Dodd.
Yeah, I think we're getting ourselves tied up in too many conditions that might not be feasible or possible to enforce. However, this concept of a train carriage is not new. I know there's a pub in Newcastle's got one. There was a one, I think, at Acklington, and I think there was a one at Weldon Bridge, the Anglers Arms, where they used older carriages that probably, you know, we are going to see more of this coming down the line, sorry. But this is going to happen. We're seeing shepherd's huts, it's the staycation, it's everybody's trying to do something different. People are wanting to come to the UK or stay in the UK and go on holiday. So I think we'll get used to this. We're going to see more of it. Quite happy with it. Thank you.
Would anybody else like to contribute? Yes, Liz.
Chair, I just wanted to hadn't finished, has gone through the list of the proposed conditions. The removed, the site to be removed and restored if the holiday lets cease within 12 months is fine, and we can add that as a condition and get that worded up. It's the final condition about the access for the disabled, access for the ramp, because it's operational development in itself. We would really need a plan to demonstrate that and have it on. So what we would suggest is that we ask the applicant, if everything else were as you wanted it, we'll ask the applicant to submit a revised plan to demonstrate the disabled access, and then with delegated authority, with these conditions to be worded to the director to in conjunction with the chair to see this application off. But we would need that revised plan because we don't know how that would be and how they would have to install that. Thank you, Chair.
I think just on that point, I think how that's been dealt with in a different committee is that, in fact, rather than granting, it's I think it was deferred, in fact, for a plan to be submitted by the applicant, and if that's satisfactory, that authority would be given to the Director of Planning to grant the permission. So rather than a straight grant, it's deferred for the applicant to submit the plan, and then if that is acceptable, the application can be granted under delegation by the Director of Planning.
Councillor Towns.
I think we should all be okay with that, because I think this application's only in front of us because of an objection from the parish council. So that will be fine with me.
And is that all right with Councillor?
Yes, that's all right with myself. There is conditions, so just with there being an existing carriageway, but thinking about engineering, which it might be that there's already been a DDA assessment done on it, and that can't be DDA compliant, depending on the width of that door going into it. It needs to be 850mm. I don't know if that's already been done, so I think putting that deferred condition on it is sensible, because if the applicant comes back saying they have gone through that DDA accessibility statement, it comes back that they can't do it, they should still get the planning permission. But as long as we ask for that DDA assessment to have been done. If they can't meet the criteria, we can't force it to.
Liz, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I'm just thinking aloud. That's a bit more complex, because we're deferring it for the applicant to submit a plan to address disabled access. So I think what you're saying, Councillor Darwin, is if they say that they can't satisfy disabled access, you would want to see this application approved in any event?
Yes, if they can't guarantee disabled access, I don't think we should block it, because it's an existing carriageway, so it's under them. But I withdraw that. I think to get it passed, I think we'll just stick with that original. Let's see the disabled access plan as it was originally tabled.
So we would return it to committee if they couldn't meet the disabled access?
Just go through. I'll just stick
do it anyway?
No, just stick with what Councillor Town said. Get the DD access.
I have to think about the wording of how we defer this then.
I take the point, because it might not be possible, but I'm, looking at the submitted plans, there's clearly thought has been given, because there's 2 disabled parking spaces. They're marked up on the plan. It seems a bit odd that if there's disabled parking spaces, for example, a wheelchair user wouldn't be able to get in because there's steps. So I think there's room there for a ramp, but if they've gone through the assessment and a ramp is not possible, then I take the point that we shouldn't be saying you can't have planning permission because you're not able to provide disabled access. So I think the condition might have to be that there has to be a discussion between the applicant and officers, and where the carriage can be DDA compliant, then a scheme for ramps should be submitted for approval. Yeah. And then that triggers the grant of the planning as has been suggested.
So I think we could maybe offer up, Chair, a minded to, subject to the applicant submitting a revised plan to deal with disability access, and then add on all the other conditions that Councillor Towns has proposed. We're only asking for the plan. They may well submit a plan, but it is not feasible, but we're only asking for the plan, so we would still be able to issue the consent. But I think then it opens the window for the applicant to be able to rectify that problem. Is that okay with you, Melanie?
So it would be minded to grant, with all of the conditions, for the applicant to submit a plan regarding disabled access, if acceptable to the Director of Planning, permission to be granted.
Okay, I've got two more speakers indicated, Councillor Wearmouth and Councillor Dodd.
I was just going to add with that one, is there not somewhere where we can say if feasible or something like that that gives Rob and the chair some flexibility? And I'm still not totally comfortable with the idea that we're not defining what, giving the applicant freedom to decide what it looks like in terms of the paint colour. It would be a simple enough condition to say, you know, the appearance to be agreed and then maintained. But if that's what, if people, and particularly if Lyle's happy as the ward councillor, then I'm not going to die in a ditch, so to speak, about that one.
So, Chair, we could ask for a feasibility DDA plan. And with respect to condition 1, I had thought from Councillor Towns that it was to retain it as was, that the colours as is, that is what we're going to protect.
I agree, and that's hideous.
Right.
But,
that's the
I'm just
proposal.
offering them. I mean, they can vary it through Section 73 or something, or no doubt in any case if they wanted to. But I just thought if you give them the opportunity, they may wish to define what it is, and then it can be maintained in that way in the future. But it's entirely up to my colleagues. I'm not going to be that fussy.
I think
want it to look like that.
I think we've kind of we're starting
really keen.
We're starting to do this to death a bit. I
Towns,
think
can
it
we
is
just-
it is what it is.
Can we just go to Councillor Dodd? He has been waiting to speak.
Thank you. I think we are really putting the cart before the horse here. It is what it is. It's going to be a converted railway carriage. That and if you look at rechecked the map, and the disabled parking spaces are just a bit wider, because not every disability means you require a wheelchair. And I think that we're getting widely ahead of ourselves on this, to have a ramp and plans and all of that kind of thing. You know, that means that any shepherd's huts that come in front of us are going to have the same. These are small converted holiday units. There will be, you know, various disabilities that can use different things. I think we've got to remind ourselves what it is. It's a conversion of an existing carriage. So I think we're tying ourselves unnecessarily up in knots. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Towns.
Well, I don't really have anything else to add, but frankly, with that last point from Councillor Dodd, I disagree. This is not a shepherd's hut. This is something that should otherwise be usable by people with a wide range of disabilities, and I can plain as the nose on my face that some people with certain disabilities will not be able to use this because of restricted access. So I think it's important that we seek to address that. If it's not something that can be complied with, as Councillor Darwin has said might be the case, then fair enough. But if the carriages can be used, otherwise be used by people, say, in wheelchairs who won't be able to access it, but they could otherwise use it, then I think it's our responsibility to ensure that they can use it. Thank you.
Do we have any other contributions before we clarify exactly what the motion reads? Right, okay, Melanie, could you try and read that back as it stands so we know exactly what we'll be voting on?
I've got so many things crossed out now. So it's it would be minded to grant permission with the conditions in the report, the additional condition mentioned by Ryan at the commencement of the committee regarding the units only to be used as holiday lets and no other use. Additional conditions relating to maintaining the existing external appearance of the units and maintenance of the same. A further condition regarding if the units aren't used as holiday lets for a continuous period of 12 months, that the units are removed and the land's restored to its previous green space. A further condition that the applicant is to submit a feasibility DDA plan with the exact wording of those to be delegated to the Director of Planning in conjunction with the Chair, and if upon receipt of the in consideration of the DDA plan, that the authority be given to the Director of Planning to issue the permission. Is that correct, Liz?
Yes, Chair Melanie, I would agree with that.
Councillor Darwin, are you happy with that for your seconding of the
I'm
motion?
happy with that for my seconding, yes.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to the vote. So everyone in favour of the proposal as has just been read out by Melanie? Keep your hands up until you've been counted. All those against? And any abstentions? Okay, thank you very much. And the last item on the planning side of the agenda is the appeals update on page 55, which is there for information purposes. At this point, given that we have got the local area council part of the meeting to commence afterwards, we will take a short break to allow any planning officers and any members of the public who would like to leave, to give them chance to leave, and also to give members a comfort break. So if we can come back, it's 2:55 now, if we can all be back by 1:45, please. If we can turn the light
Next part, sorry? Are we live streaming? Thank you. Thank you, Julie. The second part of the agenda, petitions. Have we any petitions? No, I don't think so. And we have no questions from the members of the public. Next item, item 12, local service issues. And I think we will probably put in item 15, winter services preparation, if one of the, either Martin or Stephen is going to present that. And it's looking blank faces. I'll try and I'll answer some questions. And if Martin can't answer the questions, he will come back to you with a written email reply. If that's okay, Martin? Great, gentlemen. Whichever one of you wants to go first, please. Stephen first.
Thank you, Chair.
Nice to see you again, Stephen, as well.
Nice to see you and everybody else. Paul sends his apologies, but he did prepare a report. Can everybody hear okay?
Yep.
Which I'll go through now. Straight on to grass cutting. We have seen some challenging periods early in the year due to near perfect growing conditions. You probably recall we had a spell of very warm weather, then wet conditions. The teams did recover well and ended the season with the grass at a standard we would expect. In all areas, core cuts and additional cuts were achieved, and grass cutting routes are now under annual review. Street sweeping. We are currently working on leaf hotspot areas to minimise safety and flooding risks in these high-risk areas. As ever, please bring any areas in need of sweeping attention to our attention. Winterworks. Our Winterworks programme is underway, and we welcome any requests from councillors at your earliest convenience. As always, we will carry out core works, then move on to our prioritised list of requests and see what we can get through. Waste services. Other than a few minor vehicle breakdowns, staffing shortages and COVID restrictions, residual and recycling collections are operating well. Garden waste collections have experienced some pressures this season, and we will be carrying out an annual review of the service with this in mind. Garden waste collections will come to an end at the end of this month, with the last collections being made over the 2 weeks commencing 22nd of November. Income from garden waste exceeded target. Income from commercial waste and bulk waste collections also exceeded targets, due to an excellent recovery from the initial impact caused by COVID restrictions. Teams will continue to review existing collection rounds in order to cope with ongoing housing growth, as well as continued growth in take-up from the garden waste service. A few other things to bring to the attention of the meeting. Our NEAT teams will attend, as usual, all war memorial locations and respectfully bring them to the highest standards possible for remembrance services. And finish on some good news. Northumberland gained 11 Green Flag Awards for our parks, a superb effort by all involved in a particularly difficult year. For Morpeth area, Carlisle Park again gained Green Flag status. That's the end of my presentation, Chair.
Thanks for that, Stephen. We'll throw it open to questions. One question or comment could you make on the glass collection? I know we had the trial, which was one of the trials was in my ward, and it went down extremely well. What were the sort of results of the whole trial, Stephen? Have you got those figures?
I don't have the figures to hand, but I know presentation rates exceeded expectations, and so did the yield, which is the amount of weight we take from each one. We did extend by a further collection to give time to propose a longer extension of a year. I believe that's being heard tomorrow, so we'll have to see how that goes.
That's great. Thank you very much. I say the residents in my ward, I think it's a fantastic service to have. Questions from the floor, please, first, Stephen. Councillor Wearmouth.
No questions, Stephen, but just to thank you for all of the prompt responses to all of my emails and everything that I've been bombarding you with for the recently, and to say that they're always dealt with really quickly and that people appreciate it. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Anything we can do to help?
Thanks for that, Councillor Williams. Councillor Dodds.
Yeah, I presume we highways. I can ask a question now. Yeah.
Martin, do you want to do your report first? And
I can wait.
yeah, we'll let Martin do his report first. Are there any more questions for Stephen? No. Great, Martin. Oh, sorry, Councillor Dunn.
Yes, sorry, it's just a general question about the glass collection and extending that scheme that you were referring to. Am I right in thinking that we won't be extending it very far unless there's more funding coming from government to do it?
You're absolutely correct. We are proposing to extend and add a further 1,000 houses into the scheme, and that will help gain more information and more, we'll understand the yields better and how it could be rolled out further. But you're right, the Environment Bill will inform what we do going forward. Anything will be county-wide.
So where are the extra 1,000, Stephen? Do we know?
They're basically tagged on to the tight areas for operational reasons.
Thanks for that, Stephen. Any other questions for Stephen? No. Thanks for that, Stephen. Martin, your turn, please.
On here? Is that okay? Right, okay. Okay, right. I will go through mine. COVID, there's been no changes in relation to COVID social guidelines within Coopiesfield. As it stands, we're still operating this, the social distancing, still checking the town centre signage, although it doesn't, sometimes falls a little bit off the track a little bit. And we're also don't have any confirmed cases of COVID within the Castle Morpeth area in the last 2 months. Reactive maintenance wise, I reported this to the group last time that Lee Dundas was now a new maintenance engineer. He's settling in well, and he seems to be doing okay all around. We've backfilled his post, the highway inspector's post, with a guy called Eddie Mutton, who's worked for the council for Northumberland County Council for nearly 30 years, doing a variety of roles within the highway maintenance setup, and he's settling in well as well now. So routine inspections, we've still got a bit of a backlog, and that's due to an increase of third parties, which is hampering our ability to be able to deliver our routine inspection process. So in relation to third party requests, we're up to almost 900 in the last 3 months, which is probably double most what other areas are getting. We're trying to fathom out the reason why that is, but it doesn't seem to be falling on any kind of reason behind it. So we just continue to pick up the third parties in the first instance, try and prioritise our routine inspections, and get back on track as quickly as we can. The routine programme for the gully maintenance, that's still being chipped away again. However, due to the amount of third-party requests we're getting, we're doing a lot of ad hoc, jumping around various areas rather than concentrating on my routine cleansing programme. There's a full county-wide review of the gully cleansing programme, which just so happens that I'm undertaking, and I'm hoping to have that completed by December. That's for county-wide. Move on to our works programme. Last month we didn't do much by the way of drainage works. We completed a job in Gladstone Street in Morpeth and St Leonard's Lane, both long-term drainage issues, which we hopefully we've got on top of. Minor patching. I've shared this document with Leslie today, so you'll all be able to have a copy of it. I'll not go through the list of works which we've got planned for minor patching next month and the month after, but there is a list on there for both the minor patching, the footwear works, of works that we've done last month and we've got planned for the following months. We've also got also as part of that, there's a list of highway LTP schemes which were completed in the last 2 months. They're all on there for viewing. If anyone wants any specific questions on them, I'm more than happy to answer. Sorry. And there's also a list of what LTP works coming up over the next couple of months. So again, if you have any questions on them, please give us a shout. So, and the final part in relation to our works, rather than going into depth in all of them, would be where Goose Hill, we're starting work on Goose Hill, which is a 26-week major development of the old school footprint, looking to put 100 and extra 40 parking spaces to assist with the parking within Morpeth Town Centre. That we got guys on site set up this week, with an official start date is next week. So we're looking to get on board. So, and then finally, in relation to the winter services, I've just been informed that that there was a full presentation on the winter services by Leslie there now. I was unaware of that. So I've got a couple of notes on it, because I was just going to revert back to the notes of the document that's been shared with the group. And the highlighted ones are that the salt stocks are healthy and in near enough capacity throughout the county. Rotas are all okay with full complement of drivers. We now have a new automated gritting process in place for this season. Grit bins and heaps are being replenished county-wide. There's no route changes to any of the routes from last year. And the final one, the local farmers have all been engaged throughout the process and conducted a fair and transparent procurement process. I just put some headings in there after reading the document myself. I don't get too involved with the winter services, bar the filling of the grit bins and the replenishing of those were both county owned and sort of parish or town council owned. So if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy to take the questions down and take them away in relation to the winter services. Or if you have any questions on any of the other works, I can hopefully be able to give you a response to them now.
Thanks, Martin. I've got Councillor Dodd. Any other questions for Councillor Murphy? Councillor Dodd.
Yeah. Sometimes things change on highways. And when I was coming into County Hall, a lot of times in the last year or so, and obviously this new school over the road here, I'm on about the road that goes out to Walton, or the golf, in between the golf club. I mean, the Leylandis were cut a while ago, but they're coming back. They're growing out over, and it's a very tricky junction to get out, especially when it's, school time and the factory's changing shifts up the road there. It's a pretty dreadful junction at the wrong time of day. Was there and I know it's probably an LTP, but I'm not the councillor for there. I think it's Richard. Any chance of either a lane? Because what happens is you get 2-3 cars and the whole thing is blocked up. It banks right round those corners. Whereas if there was like a little lane that anything going into Morpeth could slip down and be off and away. I'm just saying it needs a look at. And it's been, heightened now that traffic's nearly all back in the schools. There's a new school up here. So I wouldn't mind someone just having a little observation of that junction and what could be done.
I'll ask one of the highway inspectors to look at that, and we'd pass that on to the highways programme, and that would have to be looked at by the traffic and road safety team in the first instance.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Murphy.
Hi, Martin. Just a point of clarification, what's a third-party request? You said you had 900 of them in the last 3 months?
That comes from anybody else sort of outside of the local authority. So we get them in from local residents, get them from local businesses, we'll get them in from the police or the fire services. So we get a lot of standard third-party requests.
And from ourselves, would we be classed as a third party, or would you class that as internal?
It's still part of a third-party request because they're doing a different service to what they're doing. We have 2 statutory duties to undertake as part of the highway maintenance program, part of the highway maintenance, and that would be, one of them is to statutorily undertake a routine inspection and undertake repairs, and also to offer a reactive system of repairs, which is the third-party requests.
Thanks, Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you, Martin. Before I say what I want to say, can I just back Richard on, oh, just a minute, an alarm, ignore it. Just back Richard on the junction of the road to Belsay, you know, the golf club junction. It really is difficult, and cars come in, turn into Morpeth, then block your view the other way, so you can't get out at all. Many a time I've had to go down into Morpeth, you know, turn left to Morpeth, go round the roundabout and come back again. So anything we could do to help traffic coming out of there and turning to County Hall or turning right for any reason would be helpful. I will say that the gullies at this time of year are a real issue, particularly as the leaves are falling and you know, we get, sorry, I didn't do that, and obviously it then floods the road. So I'll just put that plea in, and I know you just said you're looking at those. You just mentioned that there's no change to the winter gritting routes. Could I just ask you to make a note, or to ask, because I've requested that Great Whittington Village is not on a gritting route, but it is a school bus route.
It may not be like a first, but it may be a secondary. So I'd have to check to see.
I don't think it's on at all from what I've been told. I've never been down there to check.
What was that? The
Great Whittington Village, but it is a school bus route. Thank you.
Veronica, are there any other questions for Martin? No? You've both got off very lightly today.
Makes a change.
Does, doesn't it? Thanks, gents. Please feel free to stay at the meeting if you'd like, or if you would prefer to leave, you're more than welcome. Thanks. Thanks, gents. Right, item 13 on the agenda, dualling of the A1, and we have two members from National Highways here to introduce the presentation. Now, I know there was supposed to be 3 of you, so if you could introduce yourselves, please, just press the mic.
Hopefully that's the microphone working. So just to introduce ourselves, I guess the first thing to do is just to apologise on behalf of Mark Stoneman. Mark is a project manager for the scheme, National Highways representative. He's actually had issues with childcare this afternoon. One of his daughters got called home from school from school feeling sick. So hopefully we'll get off just as lightly as the previous speakers. Mark was due to do the main element of the presentation. So just to introduce myself, I'm Stuart Cully. I'm the Community Relations Manager for Costain, who will be working on behalf of National Highways, and Paige Shields is our Community Relations Officer. In terms of just then to give you all an update as to how the scheme is progressing. Just an overview for anyone that is unfamiliar with the area. The scheme has been split into 2 sections. So from Morpeth to Felton, and then secondly from Alnwick up to Ellingham. So the first section is around about 12.5 kilometres of dualling. 6 kilometres of which are offline. So predominantly for those 6 kilometres we'll be moving to the west side of the A1. 5 new bridges to build, 3 of which will be forming new junctions at Highlaws, Fenrother and Westmore. And also working on the Parkwood subway just to the north of the River Coquet and the new bridge crossing the River Coquet, taking the southbound traffic on a new route, so building to the east. Alongside that, we're working with local landowners, local farmers, agricultural users to make sure that we've taken on board their requirements for access, looking at drainage solutions as well, new culverts, and also looking for compensatory woodlands for accommodating for what needs to be removed at the River Coquet. The Alnwick to Ellingham section, so shorter in length, 8 kilometres further north, It's got one new junction up at Charlton Myers and a new accommodation bridge. And again, similar constraints in terms of working around agricultural users. So again, we're looking at their requirements for gaining access to and from sections of land. The scheme has been relatively quiet of recently in terms of the public domain, but it doesn't preclude sort of the extensive work that's going on behind the schemes. Behind the scenes. So we put our National Highways put the development consent order application in July 2020 or 2020. We held the public examination during the early part through to the summer of this year. And now we're just in the situation where we're waiting for the planning inspector to make the decision so that we know whether the scheme will be brought on board. The other things that have been going on, I'm sure some of you may have seen the archaeology that's taking place, various bits of local Roman pottery that have been found. Nothing particularly substantial or sort of media worthy, just but we are looking at the reports that will be produced and the documents that will be produced that will be shared. We've been doing environmental surveys, so checking water courses for things like sort of the otters, looking for evidence of barn owls, that sort of thing, just to make sure that we protect the species that live around us, as well as the people that are important to the work. As well, we've got teams working for the Costain Jacobs partnership down in Leeds who are extensively looking at the design constraints in terms of actually making sure that the work is according to all the required standards. And there's been ongoing engagement with landowners, with key stakeholders, the likes of the Environment Agency, utility companies, just so we get ourselves prepared for if the planning inspector gives us the permission to go ahead. So the next thing that is, as I say, that we're expecting the planning inspector's decision in January 2022, following which there will be a cooling off period and allowing for a start of works in the summer. We're looking to get the scheme open for traffic in sort of 2024, 2025, but we're working on at the moment in terms of the programme as to which aspects of the job will need to be developed first to achieve that during the actual construction phase. Once we've got that inspector's, or should we get the inspector's decision, favourable decision, we'll be looking to increase the communications around the scheme a lot more, looking at hosting public information events so that residents and can find out more about the work that we're doing. But we are sort of very much in the early stages at the moment. One of the challenges that we've got is how we'll kind of reach out to the various remote communities. So we're looking at the option of National Highways have an engagement van that they use. So looking at whether that might be available for us to use to reach some of the more remote communities. We'll be holding the start of work ceremony as well. And obviously key to the project will be the ongoing engagement, stakeholder management, not only with Northumberland County Council but parish councillors, county councillors, landowners, schools, and just trying to sort of make sure that everyone's informed of the progress as we develop. Alongside that, we'll be using the website. Highways England have a dedicated web page for the project, so we'll be using that. Newsletters and social media will also be a tool that's available to us. But looking at a combination of different ways of getting the key messages out around the scheme. Alongside that, one of the things that we'll be doing is, and that will sort of be predominantly a role for Paige and myself, is looking at where we can add social value to the scheme. So again, we mentioned things like schools, looking at opportunities for sort of developing and helping young people to learn more about the highways industry, the sector that we work in. So just really sort of, just in terms of the details, the scheme web page is there. customer contact centre. But really, if you did a Google search for A1 in Northumberland and national highways, then that will bring up the same contact details, the same web page. So it's quick overview as to where we're at and what we're expecting to happen next. I guess it's really just whether there's any questions from anyone.
That's great. That's filled a lot of blanks in. Have we any questions? Councillor Wearmouth.
Thank you. Yes, I think that I've been tracking the website for some time in terms of the, and I'm sure that you do too, both on the National Infrastructure Planning side and on your side. Yeah. There was a decision due in October. Is there, is what I'd understood from the National Infrastructure page, is there a particular reason for the hold-up? There's many of us, including myself and the local MP, who've been campaigning to get this work done for many years. So if a few more months we can cope, but we really just want it done as fast as possible because it's urgently needed.
I think it's fair to say we've got people sort of this side that are itching to start the work as well. Living fairly locally, we're both fairly local to the northeast, and we're keen to see things progress. In terms of the decision, I believe that the latest that the inspector had was up until January, so we are keen to see that decision.
One further bit as well. In terms of, is there any enabling works? I don't think it was covered in your report there, but sorry if I missed it. That we might anticipate seeing before that. Obviously, we've seen some of the archaeological investigations and so on, which is great. But I'm thinking and looking ahead, trees and breeding bird season and newts and all of the things that'll no doubt come to frustrate you if you don't capture the season just right. Are there things that you're going to be doing now to speed this up? Because that's the sort of thing that we want to hear. We want it done as quickly as possible. I'm sure that you've grasped that already.
Yeah, that strategy is one that we're looking at the moment. Obviously, like I said, with nesting bird season, it'll be key for us in terms of doing advance works. Should we get the decision? So looking at those key areas that we need to kind of identify and actually make that starting point in. So that's there's people that are looking behind the scenes again at sort of the programme for those works.
So literally you're ready to hit the road.
Yeah? Yes.
Thanks for that. Are there any other? Councillor Downs.
Thank you, Chair. I was interested to see the point about what you described in your presentation as compensatory woodland. Well, to my mind, compensation is putting back what has been taken away. I'd like to think there's an opportunity here to actually put back a lot more than has been taken away. And we're all very aware of environmental issues these days, and we're all very aware of the need to plant lots more woodland. And Northumberland County Council has been leading the way on that with encouraging government investment in new forestry, but also in giving trees away for people to plant. And kind of kick-starting a tree planting. We've got plenty of space up here, let's face it. Okay, a tree planting kind of revolution up here again. So I'd like to think that there's an opportunity here to put back a lot more than is being lost. So hopefully you can confirm that will be the case.
Yeah, certainly we're looking at sort of as much planting as what we possibly can. There are figures that will be on the planning inspector's website, on the PIN's website, in terms of the numbers that are being planted. I don't want to quote the number simply because I'm working off memory. But if we can take it away, we can certainly come back to you on that.
Thanks. Are there any other questions? No. You've got off lately as well tonight.
Thank you.
I mean, thank you very much for coming. The main reasons we want to get here, but it seems to have had stalled, and a lot of the members of the public are questioning because we've been waiting. So, as Councillor Wearmouth said, we've been waiting for so long for this, and we're getting a lot of questions. Is it actually going to happen? So, by bringing you along, it's kind of confirmed just about, hopefully, that it will. So thank you very much for your time and your presentation. Most appreciated. Before we go on to the next item, I think Leslie needs to swap people around and wipe benches, etc., which will take a couple of seconds.
Yeah, if we could just cut the live stream for a couple of minutes as well. That
Could we
would be
just
great.
cut the
Thanks,
live stream
Ross.
for about two minutes, please? Thanks for your patience, councillors. Leslie's working flat out by herself today. Right, next item on the agenda, Northumberland Communities Together. Good afternoon, ladies. Thank you for your patience for waiting for so long. If you would like to introduce yourselves and carry on with your presentation.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Maureen Taylor. I'm Interim Exec Director for Communities and Business Development. And I'll let Emma introduce herself.
Emma Richardson. I'm Poverty Lead for NCC and also Strategic Lead for Northumberland Communities Together.
And thank you for the invitation to give you an update on Northumberland Communities Together. Won't drag it out too long. Take questions at any point through this. Northumberland Community... Oh, there we go. So hopefully you recognise the name and the brand. Northumberland Communities Together was pulled together 24th of March 2020, a day that we'll all probably remember at the very start of the pandemic, and it was like walking on hot coals at that time. But what we did, I'm very proud of what the team have done, and this will give you an update of where we are now. So Communities Together was established originally to deal with the pandemic, but actually it's grown beyond that, and it's now a very inclusive and multidisciplinary service that we operate in the council. We look at the emerging needs of our local residents, we look at immediate need, and we have worked very hard with local community groups and established partners in our community in Northumberland to make sure that we're targeting our approach in the right way for the right reasons. So we kind of help others to do the best that they can do for local residents. We don't do a prescriptive approach. We try to work in localities to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those particular localities, because not every section of the county is the same as the other, as you obviously are well aware. We are quite new, obviously, and we are developing ourselves, and Emma and I were just chatting there about, we're developing to meet the needs while we're developing as a team and a service. So we're trying to be very flight of foot, and we try to keep ahead of the game where we can. If I press the right side of the button. Principally, you will have a slide deck of this, but principally what we're trying to do is deal with the social determinants of health and well-being in our community. So we are touching on a whole range of issues. It mentions hunger at the top of the page there. Emma will jump up and down. We don't use the word hunger. We talk about food insecurities, and we now have a new enemy in the patch, which is fuel insecurities. And we know that our residents are really struggling with this, so we are focusing a lot of our themed work around that. But also, Communities Together helps people to access care. We support them to access housing, transportation. The list goes on. We try and touch on all of those wider determinants because we can lean into the council, lean into council services to make sure that they get the right approach from us as a local authority. And where we can't provide that, we will find others who can help us do that. So it's a very inclusive approach. This structure is a bit busy, but what it's trying to demonstrate is that the Communities Together team it's not in two halves, but it has two main functions. The green side of it is the operational delivery, and within there we've got locality coordinators who link into local groups in each of the localities. Support planners are the individuals who work directly with residents on a one-to-one basis to work out how we can get them to a better place in terms of their needs, whether that be finances, food, employment, mental health support, any of those direct issues. We brought into Communities Together the NET system. You'll be maybe familiar with that, the welfare support, the welfare rights. So actually we can make sure that residents are getting everything that they're entitled to and they're not struggling unnecessarily. The VRU project is actually something that Emma developed. It's the Violence Reduction Unit project where we work with Northumbria Police. We're really proud of that. That's starting to take shape really well. And the COVID support officers, we haven't got out of COVID. We do still have to do some work about championing communities to stay safe and stay well. So we have a team of COVID, or what we call now community support officers, to support that hands-on work. And basically, we're trying to reduce the difficulties and the health inequalities that some of our residents are facing. And that's all ages, that's young people and older people, trying to reduce the number of households, and particularly children who are suffering poverty or inequalities and disadvantage. And we're trying to make sure that we use every pound wisely. We know that local groups, community groups, can make a tenner go a very, very long way, and we are maximising that with them. The yellow side of the team is the programme development team, and primarily what they're doing is seeking out opportunities, looking at ways to bring communities together. Community hubs is one of our key focuses, one of our key themes, which I'll talk to you about in a second. And actually trying to work with community groups to understand what it is they're finding out in their local communities. What is it that's the need in your area? What can we do to connect up with you and support you? Be that through connections, networking, governance support, a bit of funding, or some expertise from within the council. So that's how the team's configured. You'll see that the development team also managed the volunteer programme. We got a huge number of volunteers through COVID, and we're trying to harness that and make sure we're directing that energy in the right places, and people aren't just sitting waiting for a phone call. We're giving them, moving them to have activities to do on a regular basis, and encourage them to stay with that. Actually, this service operation is headed by Paul Brooks. Unfortunately, Paul can't be here today. He's having to isolate. But he would have been here. So the response hub, basically we take calls, we take emails, the team will take referrals from anybody and anywhere, and they'll work that through, make emergency calls, call back to individuals if that's what's required. And we'll put in all kinds of support, be that emergency food, support from a local community partner, looking at their wider difficulties. So the premise being, we know people might have a food issue or food insecurity that we can solve on the day, but actually that's not the answer. The answer is to work out why they're in that position, what we can do to support them to get out of that situation, and making those connections really strong and keeping a hold of them until they're in a better place. And we've had some good successes with that. Locality coordinators, you will have your own. I think Castle Morpeth, I think we're out to advert for a vacant locality coordinator. As soon as that post's appointed to, we'll make sure you're all aware of that named individual, and they should be a really good asset to you as well for your area. So a lot about the community engagement work. We do that through enriching people's lives, and for some of that, for some of those people, it's been a lifeline. It's been an activity, or it's been a connection that they've been able to make through COVID to reduce isolation and actually open them up to some better prospects and some better ideas. And through that learning, you'll see in some of the pictures on the right-hand side, a lot of the younger people have really engaged in that. And I think through the last few months, Emma, keep me right, how many young leaders have we managed to connect in?
We've got more than 70 young leaders with various organisations, and managed to, even talking about the summer camps, 36 summer camps with face-to-face places for more than 1,800 children, which was brilliant.
So the reach has been really good, and the reaction has been really good about community work. And you'll remember last summer the pop-ups. Some of you will have known that we got out there. We got teams out there. We went into areas of the county, into some of the estates where we were really worried about the resident impact and the disadvantage, and we didn't wait. We went out there and we worked with them. We played music and we brought them gifts, and we had conversations, and we checked the kids to make sure actually they were fed, they had their clothes on, they were out with their PJs, and there was some interaction going on with their parents as well. So safeguarding with a very small s, but very important pieces of work that were done by the team. So one of the new developments that we're focusing on is the concept of community hubs. Now, we got an investment from Northumberland Combined Authority of £500,000 to start looking at the concept of community hubs, and that work is underway in earnest now. Now, you might have heard me or others talk about Cramlington, which was our flagship. It is our flagship community hub. The reason for Cramlington was we had a building. It was there, it was available. We had some ideas about how we would source furniture, how we would get community groups engaged, and it's just taken off. It's been tremendous. If anybody would like to visit there to see what the options are, then more than happy to facilitate that. Hubs are not council-led. Hubs need to be in the right places for the right reasons. We are talking to a number of community groups who've got small venues who need a bit of help, where their residents feel comfortable to engage, where they've got meaning in their local communities. There's no point in us turning up and saying, "Dada, you're a hub." That doesn't mean anything. We need to work with local communities and yourselves and parish councils and community groups to work out what's going to work. So we've got some quite good ideas and some really interesting ideas about what a community hub could be. And the thing that got us over the line with North of Tyne, which kind of raised the difference between us and Newcastle and North Tyneside, was the concept of having digitally connected hubs. So you don't have to come to a big fancy building to be part of a hub. You could dial into activities that might be happening in Cramlington or Morpeth or anywhere else. Even if you live out in the most remote areas, you shouldn't be disadvantaged. You should be able to take part in some of the activities and the learning that's happening there, and that's unique. That hasn't been tried anywhere else. So we're putting a bit of effort into that. Snapshot. There's loads of figures we could quote at you. 25,000, over 25,000 clinically extremely vulnerable people is where we started. We provided 22,000 welfare visits to those individuals at the height of COVID. We had 18,000 direct contacts with people by telephone or in person, door knocking to check on people's welfare. We distributed hundreds of emergency food parcels until the national team took that off our hands. And, things like, it was over 7,000 emergency food parcels went out, to nearly 3 million pieces of PPE. I mean, this was a military operation, and it gives us a bit of a wobble when I think back about it. But we did it, and I think we did it well, and we kept residents safe. In terms of cash that's gone out the door, managed by Communities Together, there was the original Emergency Assistance Fund, 360,000, nearly $1 million on the Winter Support Grant last year. We put out a local support grant, 1.1 million, that's gone out the door. Holiday activity and food programmes, 1.1 million on that, which has been over the school holidays. And what might be of interest to you more now is the 2.4 million that we've just received from government for the household support fund for winter. I've just sent a message to all members of the council today about readiness for that, in terms of getting in touch with NCT, Communities Together, if you have anybody who you are concerned about or looking for support. The community enrichment work is the community hub work. That's the 500,000 that we secured, and a lot of place-based work around new pathways of support. The half, as Emma said, 11,000 children were supported through the holiday activity and food, and that wasn't giving them a hot dog. That was really meaningful activities and some decent food provided by local food support groups. It wasn't the grubby grab bags, as the team would call about. Our kids are worth more than that, so we put the effort in to make sure that they were well fed with hot meals, and sometimes taught how to cook them, which was great. And nearly 2,000 family passes for the holiday activity. So there was no, getting rid of the stigma attached to somebody on free school meals. That you have to declare that before you're allowed to get go to some event. So we got this model where the family activity passes has allowed them to experience some really great things. Visits to the zoo, visit to the cinema, visits for bowling, just to raise the bar for these children who have sometimes very challenging situations that they're living through. And 12 supported learning placements, so employment and learning is driven through this as well. Couple of case stories if you're interested, if you've got time. A couple of cases very quickly. A girl turned up outside Cramlington and the Cramlington hub. One of the teams saw her. She'd been sleeping on the bench overnight. You don't expect this to be happening to you right under the nose of your office or whatever. She was homeless, been sleeping rough. Team picked up that actually there was something going on here. She had a job. She had a job in Manor Walks at the Home Bargain. She'd managed to secure herself some employment there. But if she was going to be late for work and turn up unkempt, she's going to lose her job. And she had nobody to support her. So the team took her in, literally took her in, got her freshened up, made sure she was going to be on time to get into work and into her little job there at Cramlington. In the meantime, sorted out a housing, accommodation issues with housing in the council, direct access, got her some white goods to make sure this accommodation, she had a fridge, she had a kettle, she had a sofa, she had a bed to lie on. Got her access to a support grant, some food, fuel voucher so she could warm the place, got her connected to some community groups, got her advice on her finances. This girl had a black eye, by the way, but she didn't want to get involved in any services or police reporting, but she was on our radar in terms of any potential harm. We got her a mobile phone so she could stay in touch with her family or make contact for our personal affairs, get things sorted, online banking and everything else. That was done by the time that girl came back from the end of her shift. So that's how fast and responsive we can be. And that's what we can stop homelessness, because we've given an example there, and we can get people back on their feet and keep them in employment, which is really important. That girl's offered to become a volunteer in the hub, and that's the biggest thank you we could have. So that's been tremendous, that example. The second one, very quick, this is an older person, disabled. She was referred by a local councillor, had a long-term disability, some healthcare issues. She wasn't able to maintain her property. There was discord in the locality, and the neighbours were kind of getting really upset about the state of this place, worrying about the antisocial behaviour and the mess and whatever. She was at risk of losing her tenancy, potentially to be evicted. To cut a long story short, I think it's the best way. Voluntary support, NCT got voluntary support in, got our garden sorted out. You can see the before and after photographs there for this lady. Got support in while she was hospitalised. She had to go for a planned procedure. Got her tenancy sorted out. Got her support on her discharge, connecting to the discharge support team. And the understanding from the community now was that lady was in real difficulty. But now they understand it's supported, and that's, I think, if the councillor wanted to comment, I think that has just created a little bit more of community cohesion, and that lady isn't in a care home now where she's probably heading. She could have been heading. She is enabled to be independent at home. So the outcomes that we can achieve are they're pretty plain. But what we want to do is do this at scale. So what's coming next? All members will be getting a pack, because I'm conscious it's really difficult for you all to remember phone numbers or who do I go to when I've got a resident in difficulty. You're getting a pack of postcards, which will be handy for you to have around in your surgeries or in your bags or whatever, to make sure that you've got these numbers at hand. The getting ready for winter issue is really important. Making sure that, as these dark nights come in, people aren't struggling or worrying about what's going to happen to them. So we're not just listening here, that is available, but there's practical, real hands-on practical support. As I mentioned, the £2.4 million is available to us as a local authority. That's our allocation from the government. We can support self-isolation, practical support in a lifeline. Holiday activities will come out of that. We've got some work going on for Christmas, toy and family gift grants with trusted partners. We're trying to make people feel that they are part of a whole community and not feeling disadvantaged. We can access and support people to access the rebate on the energy bills, the warm home discount, because we know not everybody's accessing that. We want to do a big push to make sure they're getting everything they're entitled to. The cold weather payments that are available. So I'm not going to read the list. But there is provision there, and what we want to do is connect people into what's available to them, because we've got a lot of bad news, haven't we, at the minute about vulnerability and cost of food, the cost of fuel. We can find we can't solve it, but we can find some of the solutions, and we will be doing the promoting the grants for green homes as well for people who are struggling with heating. And the last one there, the free childcare that not everybody's aware of, but to support families to get access to that, the £5,000. So you recognise that leaflet when it comes through, I hope. Points of contact. The key number, I think, for you to remember is the 620 015 number. Any service you want to access for a vulnerable person through the council, the team will make that happen for you. So please use that number. And if it's a real serious out of hours emergency, then it's the one call number which you will all have anyway. Okay, it's me done. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Excellent presentation and some fantastic work done. Have we any questions? Councillor Dunn.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm not going to comment on either of the cases, but I do know of them, and I can definitely say it was a big success story. My only problem would be more is that I can see you having so many referrals coming to your department. Are we geared up for this? Because I think there's going to be absolutely loads of them. And don't get me wrong, I think when we do come to you, I think you find the way forward. I mean, I've been in touch with you this morning about one which, really weird sort of request, I think. But I can see you having a lot of requests coming to your department. So are you satisfied that we've got the manpower to deal with this? Yes, I think we are. I think we're in a good place, and the reason I'm saying that is because through the COVID grant we've been able to increase the establishment with community champions. So our mechanisms mean we've got a few extra pairs of hands to be able to pick up and deal with certain issues. But I'm confident that we've got a really good support planning team, and they know how to triage. They know how to, that's more important than that one. But we do try to turn things around in a day, as you know. Where we have difficulty, we will keep you up to speed. But yes, it is. But if we don't do it, that's a greater issue for me. If we don't open our doors, we will have more vulnerable people who are in, more difficult need, and then it's harder to sort it. If we can get them early and we can work on prevention, we can avoid some more difficult circumstances, I think.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. Not so much a question, but just thanks for everything that you do for the vulnerable people out there. And it's just such a shame that it's taken COVID to get this up and running. So I suppose, they say every cloud has a silver lining, so COVID's had this silver lining. We wish COVID hadn't come along, but at least something good has come out of it. And it was good to hear that first case that you mentioned, where we helped somebody so that they wanted to come back as a volunteer. And it's always good to have volunteers like that, because if anybody's got empathy, it's them. They've been through it. They understand. Communicate to those vulnerable people just how effective the service is, and even if they draw on their own experience. So I think that's quite a valuable thing to actually have. So from me, it's just a huge vote of thanks for everything that you do, and I'm sure you will definitely keep up the good work. Thank you.
Much appreciated. I'll pass that on to the team.
Any other questions?
Does anybody want to come and volunteer? You're more than welcome.
No? Well, that was an excellent presentation, and just really to reiterate everything that's been said. You do some fantastic work, and
I think Councillor Towns had his hand up there.
sorry,
Chair.
Councillor,
Sorry.
thank you. I didn't.
Sorry.
My fault really, Chair, because I didn't really put my hand up right to the last second there. But it was again, it's just really what you were saying there, just to reiterate, and my thanks, because Julie makes a very good point that it's maybe a silver lining to the very dark. But right at the beginning, there was people in my area who were self-isolating, and we knew far less about things as we do now, and how to go about and change our behaviours, etc. And there were people literally who didn't know where the food for that evening was coming from, and actually I referred them to you guys very early on, and I got a message, I think it was probably within an hour, saying a food parcel had been brought around to them, and they were incredibly grateful for how responsive the service was. So that's what we're doing with more stuff. These case studies are very inspiring as well. I suppose I do actually have one question, which is just about your funding. You've mentioned a COVID grant, but obviously that's not going to last forever. So are you confident that funding to continue to grow this service going forward?
Yes, Chair. So the initial team were pulled together from staff already in the council. So it was kind of a revenue neutral arrangement. We just pulled on services, and I put them together as a team because of the work they were already doing. So there was already locality coordinators, over here doing something, and welfare rights over here doing something else, and just by pulling them together, we created that team. We have got a little bit of extra resource in there with agreement from Cabinet, which was very well received. It's not a huge amount, but it was just to put in securing some key managerial positions to make sure that we could manage the huge amount of grant money that's come through. So we have been running on grant funds, but that money has gone out, and it has been more successfully used, in my opinion, because we've passed it out with community groups who can make it go further than we could as a council, because we're clunky and we're expensive and all of those things that local authorities are. So that's been really successful. The grant funding, we are cautious about what comes through, but the work that we've done with community groups are now much more focused. So their investment is now tuned up. So they're adding value. So it's more targeted. And I'm really, really appreciative of that. That they've kind of found their purpose to some extent as well. So I think that's been a huge community delivered response and change for good reason. But I will always be mindful of how this gets sustained and how we do progress, because we could have another pandemic. Who knows?
Thank you for that. I'm looking around. No more questions from anyone. And all I can say is thank you very much for your excellent work you're doing. It is really appreciated by everybody throughout the county. Thank you. Right, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about finished. Item 16, local area council work programme, which is just a note. Any urgent business? I don't have any. Looking around, nobody else seems to have any. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for councillors, for your attendance. It's been a long meeting, but I think you'd agree that all of the presentations have been excellent and very worthwhile hearing about them and learning as well from them. Thank you all.